Those of you that are guests with us, thanks. I'm Pastor Tom. Thank you for stopping by. As I mentioned, the other guys are all on hiatus this week, so I invite you to come back and meet those guys. Students, for tonight, there will be no youth tonight because Pastor Colin's not allowed to be around you. But I'm sure there'll be other activities. Follow the website and they'll tell you what's going on. On Friday, those of us that are hosting French students, they'll be coming into town Friday evening-ish, 7 o'clock, 7:30. I'm not exactly sure on the time, but our church is hosting 13 young men and women from France. There are, didn't she say 200 total for the summer? 225 or something like that? So we just have a certain section of them. So next Sunday when you get here, there will be 13 at least new people that you be able to make new friends. And I wanted to point out Millie. Millie today is a neighbor of ours, lives down the street. She's visiting from Jamaica for a little while. And she went out walking around trying to find a church. And somebody picked her up and brought her here. Okay? And she was here at 9 o'clock, and she stayed for second service because I told her you guys were all wonderful people, and she wanted to meet all of you. But thank you for stopping by.
Thank you.
Well, God bless you, and we appreciate you coming. You win the long distance visitor award for the day. Okay? But we've been studying through the Sermon on the Mount, and last summer we got about halfway, and then we picked it up this summer. And I was going to just race through this thing, but there's really so much in here that for us to talk about or to think about. And so we're in the middle of a section right now about somebody who needs your tunic, somebody who wants to borrow money, and then Colin talked to you last week about going the extra mile. And so today we're going to talk about verse 40, only one verse. If someone wants to sue you and take your tunic, let him have your cloak as well. It's two different pieces of clothing. Everybody knows what a tunic is, sort of, right? Yes? No? Okay, well, I'll be happy to tell you. The Sermon on the Mount is about things that could really happen. I keep saying this to you every week. It's about stuff that could happen at work. It could happen in the neighborhood. It could happen at the barbecue. It could happen at the ball game. It's about real-life experiences that have to do with people, interaction of conflict, relationship. And so in a lot of ways, the Sermon on the Mount is the most practical section of Jesus' teaching for us to all walk out here and be able to say, wow, this really could apply to me in such and such a situation. I said this last summer, that the Sermon on the Mount gives us a heavenly perspective on things like murder and divorce and anger and adultery, and now we're talking about generosity. And when I said this last summer, it stirred something in me, which was, what really is heaven's perspective on life? And it's something that I've been wrestling through really for a year, and I still don't have my mind wrapped around it. I'm trying to get there. But it really is, what does heaven have to say? What would God say about the things that we worry about, the things we're concerned about? So that's kind of where we're going over the next several months. Every week I tell you this. There are three things as we look at God's Word, always to ask ourselves these questions. What did Jesus say? What did He teach? And how does this affect me? Because not everything that Jesus said is what He taught. For example, I gave you the example a few weeks ago, the eye for an eye, tooth for tooth. Yes, He said it, but that was an old law He was quoting. That wasn't what He was teaching. So it's important for us to say, how is this going to affect me when I go to work tomorrow? How is it going to affect me this week when I'm on vacation? So we all know the old saying, it's the cloak that makes the man. And that's what we're going to talk about today. This saying, how would we say this? It's the clothes that make the man, right? And so, as odd as that sounds, here we are saying that. What's the guy that has the suit thing? Oh, I guarantee it. What's that guy? Men's Warehouse, right? And he would say, it's the clothes that make the man. Well, that really is an old idea, and that it comes from this section of Scripture, actually. So what did Jesus say about our tunic and our cloak? The tunic is a long tube. It's more like it's almost like pajamas. It was an undergarment. It was thin. It was cheap. It wasn't high quality. Even the poorest of the poor would have more than one tunic. It was the part of the garment that they would change. When I was in the golf business and we'd have to put away golf carts in the rain, we would take a trash bag and we would cut a hole in the corner, and we cut a hole in the middle, we pull the trash bag over us, and it would pull all the way down to our knees. It was the way we would stay dry from having to sit on wet seats. That's exactly what a tunic is. It looks exactly the same. It's just a shell. Okay? It's not a robe with a belt. It's just the undergarment. Okay? Okay, so everybody had more than one of these. And so the law said, if a man sues you and needs your tunic, give him your tunic. But then it goes on and talks about the cloak. The cloak was different. The cloak was like a blanket. It's not a jacket. It's more like a shawl. Okay? And it just draped over your shoulders and it would hang off your arms. It didn't fasten in any way. It was like a large blanket. It kind of had a different shape to it than just a square. But it served more to be kind of like a robe during the day. But at night they would use it to be a blanket. The Jewish person would only have one of these. So Jesus is telling these guys, if they're asking you for your tunic, which you have more than one, you should give it. But then Jesus said, and if they want your cloak, give them your cloak too. The cloak was a big deal, and it's because it wasn't just a blanket. It wasn't just a shawl. It had significance to it. And the law said that if I wanted to sue you, Josh, if I wanted to sue you, I could sue you for your tunic. But I couldn't take your cloak. And the reason was, if you think back, the Hebrew people are very concerned about protection. They're very concerned about identity and dignity. And so if I needed your tunic, dude, and you had more than one, and I know you do, I should get it, but I couldn't take your cloak. And now Jesus is saying, I understand the law, but you should give the guy your cloak as well. The cloak had a symbolic significance. Remember a couple of weeks ago, I was explaining to you how they would strike people with the back of their hand, and there was something communicated there. When Helena and Derek got married on Wednesday, they joined right hands because the right hand is a show of your strength and of your assets. There was always symbolism to the Hebrew people. And the cloak had significance to it. Those of us that are alive in the 70s, remember when you had a varsity jacket? It was cool, wasn't it? Right? With the leather or plastic sleeves. If you were cheap like my parents, you bought the plastic sleeves. Right? And it had the big letter, whatever your school was, and all those little pins, and all the cool people when they walked down the hallway go jingle, 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 because they had like 47 pins. Okay, mine didn't have no pins, all right? I didn't have leather on mine. Okay, but I had a jacket. And on the back it said Kalamazoo Central. That's all that mattered. I was part of it, right? The jacket. How many varsity jackets did you have? One. Same as a cloak. You had one. You didn't have more than one because you didn't need more than one. And the jacket carried with it some significance. Obviously, the cloak was to protect. Okay? We forget that where Jesus lived, it was cold. I've never seen a Jesus movie with him in the snow. Have you ever seen Jesus huddled up next to the fire, with marshmallows and s'mores? No, that doesn't happen. It's always Jesus in the desert. But even the desert is cold at night. Okay? And so the tunic served, or the cloak served as a blanket. It served as protection. And so you couldn't take Josh's protection because then he would get sick or then he would die. And so the law was, you can't do that to him because that would be bad for Josh. The second part is that the cloak was a part of your heritage. It said something about who you were, like Kalamazoo Central said to the guys at Lloyd Norris, don't mess with me, I'm a maroon giant. I wasn't a giant, but my team was called Maroon Giant. Okay? It had a bit of significance to it. For example, this right here, that is the Tufts family crest. Okay? It's too small because I had to download it little tiny and stretch it. Okay? But that is the crest of the Tufts family from England. They're from Essex, England, my heritage. My forefathers were some of the first people over here after the original boats got here. And my family came here for one reason, and that was to pursue religious freedom. That's why my family came here. One of my forefathers, his name is Charles, 9 grandfathers ago for me, 10 for my kids, donated a bunch of land. They were wealthy people. They donated a bunch of land in Boston, Massachusetts to build a college. And it's still there, and it's called Tufts University. That is my family. My family did that. Now, I didn't go there. I didn't want to be a dentist or a veterinarian or a surgeon or an optometrist. That's pretty much what comes, or business. They have a lot of business people from that. But that's my family. And so that crest right there is hundreds of years old. And it carries with it a certain amount of family value or dignity. Okay? But I don't wear that on my shirt and I don't wear it on my my jacket, because that's not who I am today, but that's who my family is. That's my lineage. Okay? So attached to my cloak is my family value. And if I walked around with the Tufts on the back, then that meant something to people. And if you were the Smiths or the Johnsons or the Jones, and you walked around with your cloak communicated something about who I am and what I've accomplished and what group I belong to.